At 7:12 in the morning, inside a quiet suburban home outside Columbus, Ohio, 74-year-old Harold Bennett stood frozen in his kitchen, holding a yellow legal folder that said Family Living Trust. The coffee machine was still running. His wife Elaine's reading glasses were still sitting beside the sugar bowl, exactly where she left them 3 months earlier, before the stroke that changed everything. Outside, the neighborhood looked peaceful. A mail truck rolled slowly past, trimmed lawns. Wind pushed dead autumn leaves across the driveway. Ordinary America. But inside that kitchen, Harold had just discovered the part nobody tells you. The trust they spent $4,800 creating might not protect the assets they thought it would. Not the retirement account, not the inherited IRA, not the jointly owned vacation property, and not the nursing home exposure now quietly building behind the scenes. Listen carefully. Because millions of Americans over 60 have been told one sentence for decades: just get a living trust, and your family will avoid disaster. But in 2026, the hidden rules inside the engineered system are becoming impossible to ignore. And what many retirees are about to discover is that the trust was never the full shield they thought it was. This is where the trap begins. And for some families, this becomes the quiet confiscation of generational wealth. Because the government keeps the receipt, and the IRS is waiting. A week after Elaine's hospitalization, Harold's daughter Melissa sat with him at the dining room table, reviewing account statements under a warm amber lamp. There was the paid-off house worth $640,000, two IRAs totaling $890,000, a brokerage account, a small lake cabin inherited from Elaine's parents, and neatly stacked estate planning documents from an attorney they trusted for nearly 15 years. Harold thought they were prepared. Most retirees think they are. That's the emotional comfort living trusts create. You sign papers, you place assets into the trust. You hear phrases like avoid probate. You feel protected. But the hidden rule is that many assets never actually move under the protection people imagine. This is the part nobody tells you. A living trust can help avoid probate for certain titled assets, but retirement accounts, those operate under an entirely different set of rules. And this is where the second blade swings down. Because naming the trust incorrectly or failing to coordinate beneficiary designations can trigger tax acceleration, inheritance complications, Medicaid exposure, and devastating payout consequences. The clock is already ticking, especially for Americans over 70 with large traditional IRAs. Because under the Post-Secure Act world now colliding with updated IRS enforcement practices in 2026, many beneficiaries are walking into a financial guillotine they never saw coming. Melissa discovered the first problem when she noticed Harold's IRA beneficiary forms still listed the Bennett Family Living Trust instead of Elaine directly. That sounded organized, professional, responsible, but their CPA explained something horrifying. Depending on how the trust was written, the inherited IRA distributions might now be forced into compressed trust tax brackets instead of personal brackets. Stop the video. You need to understand this. In 2026, trusts can hit the top federal tax bracket at shockingly low income levels, not hundreds of thousands, not millions, sometimes barely over $15,000 of retained income. That means an inherited IRA distributed into certain trusts can become a tax furnace, a quiet transfer of retirement wealth directly into accelerated taxation. The system is counting on you not knowing this. Harold stared silently at the numbers. If Melissa inherited the IRA personally over time, the tax damage could potentially stay manageable. But through the trust structure, the hidden math became brutal. A $900,000 IRA inherited over 10 years could create hundreds of thousands in taxable distributions. Then came state taxes, then Medicare IRMAA surcharges, then capital gains interactions, then Social Security taxation, one layer after another. The trap kept tightening. And Elaine had believed the trust solved everything. This is where families lose everything emotionally, not because they were irresponsible, but because estate planning in America has become fragmented into disconnected systems. The attorney handles the trust, the broker handles the IRA, the CPA handles taxes, the Medicare system calculates premiums separately, and nobody connects the entire machine together. That engineered separation is where the danger lives. Trap number 1, the false asset shield. Most seniors believe putting assets in the trust means all wealth becomes protected, but many assets pass by beneficiary designation instead. IRAs, 401ks, annuities, life insurance, And if those designations conflict with the trust strategy, the legal paperwork can become a battlefield after death, especially in blended families, second marriages, adult children from prior marriages, or surviving spouses dealing with cognitive decline. Listen carefully. This is not rare anymore. One missing beneficiary update after a death can redirect hundreds of thousands of dollars completely outside the intended plan. The trust sits there beautifully prepared while the money bypasses it entirely. That's the hidden rule. And in 2026, with retirement accounts larger than ever due to years of market growth, the consequences are becoming catastrophic. Now, trap number 2, the Medicaid trap. This is the one that terrifies elder law attorneys behind closed doors, because many Americans hear living trust and assume nursing home protection. That assumption destroys families. Revocable living trusts generally do not shield countable assets from Medicaid eligibility calculations. Let that sink in. The trust may avoid probate, but still leave assets fully exposed to long-term care spend-down rules. This is where the quiet seizure of generational wealth begins. Because nursing home costs in many states now exceed $11,000 to $16,000 per month. Per month. One stroke, one dementia diagnosis, one fall, one extended care event, and suddenly decades of retirement savings begin draining through what feels like an invisible pipeline. Harold learned this after Elaine's rehabilitation facility extended her care assessment. The social worker asked questions about liquid assets, brokerage balances, retirement accounts, property, trust documents. Harold answered confidently at first. "We already have a living trust." The woman paused gently before saying the sentence that shattered him. "That may not protect these assets the way you think." That moment changed everything, because this is the part nobody tells you. The living trust often protects families from probate delays, not from the long-term care machine. Different systems, different rules, different traps, and the government keeps the receipt. Now the real danger begins, because once one spouse dies, the widow's penalty enters the room. This is the silent financial ambush, crushing surviving spouses across America. A married couple may have lived comfortably on $140,000 combined retirement income, but after one death, the survivor often falls through a trapdoor in the tax code. Married filing jointly disappears. Single filer brackets compress. ARMA AA, Medicare thresholds tighten. Social Security taxation shifts. RMD pressure increases. Investment income stacks faster, and suddenly the surviving spouse pays more taxes on less household income. The engineered system becomes colder after death, not easier, harder. Harold discovered this while reviewing projections with a financial planner. If Elaine died first, Harold's taxes could actually increase despite losing half the household. Think about how brutal that sounds emotionally. You lose your spouse, then the system sends the bill. That's the second blade. And many living trusts do absolutely nothing to stop it. Now let's talk about the hidden math, because this is where viewers finally understand the scale of the danger. Imagine a retired couple in 2026 with $1.20 million in IRAs, $420,000 home equity, $280,000 brokerage account, $3,900 monthly Social Security, $1,700 pension. Sounds comfortable. Middle class successful. Responsible Americans. Now add one nursing home event lasting 4 years at $13,500 monthly. That alone can exceed $648,000. Then layer in taxable IRA withdrawals, Medicare premium increases, market downturns, estate administration costs, and survivor tax compression. Suddenly, the family loses nearly $1 million. Quietly, systematically. The financial guillotine doesn't arrive in one dramatic explosion. It happens through paperwork, forms, assessments, beneficiary rules, tax thresholds, look-back calculations, and bureaucratic timing. That's why the trap feels invisible until it's too late. Save this video. Seriously, save it, because most retirees never see this coming. Comment your age and state below, because long-term care costs and estate rules vary dramatically across America, and send this to one married couple immediately, especially if they believe a living trust alone solves everything. Because you need to understand this, estate planning is no longer about documents. It's about system coordination, the trust, the taxes, the beneficiary designations, the Medicaid exposure, the survivor income strategy, the Roth conversion timing, the long-term care risk. Every piece must work together, or the trap closes. Now here's the survival strategy the wealthy quietly use. First, Review every beneficiary designation immediately. Not next year. Not eventually. Now. Because beneficiary forms often override the trust itself. Second, understand whether the trust is revocable or irrevocable and what that actually means for asset protection. Those are not interchangeable. The language difference can determine whether assets remain exposed. Third, review inherited IRA strategy under the current Secure Act environment, especially if trusts are named as beneficiaries. The hidden math changes fast. Fourth, evaluate long-term care exposure before a health crisis occurs. Because once the medical event begins, the clock is already ticking. And remember the look-back rule. Transfers made too late can trigger devastating Medicaid penalties. This is where families panic, and panic is expensive. Fifth, review survivor tax projections while both spouses are still alive. Most couples plan for retirement income. Very few plan for the widow's penalty. That mistake becomes catastrophic later. And finally, understand this truth clearly. A living trust is a tool, not a magical shield, not a fortress, not complete protection. And believing otherwise may become one of the most expensive misunderstandings in modern retirement planning. Harold finally closed the yellow folder just before midnight. The kitchen had gone dark except for the small light above the stove. Elaine was asleep upstairs after another exhausting day of rehabilitation therapy. And for the first time in years, Harold realized their retirement plan had gaps large enough to swallow the family legacy they spent 40 years building. That realization is happening in homes all across America right now. Quietly, slowly, painfully. The IRS is waiting, the Medicaid system is calculating, the survivor tax rules are already written, and the engineered system is counting on ordinary Americans not discovering these hidden rules until after the damage is done. Do not wait for the crisis meeting. Do not wait for the funeral. Do not wait for the nursing home assessment. Do not wait for the tax shock letter. Because by then, the trap has usually already closed. My name is Ivana Forbes. Subscribe now for more retirement survival warnings and hidden financial traps most Americans never discover until it's too late. And remember this, the greatest danger to your retirement may not be the market crash you can see, but the quiet confiscation hidden inside the rules you were never told to question.